Good evening. Welcome to Love Talk. I'm Gregory Morgan, and welcome to a presentation of Embrace Growth. I am the co-founder, along with my wife, Dr. Azita Sayan, of Embrace Growth, which is an organization designed to empower people in their relationships, in their communities, in their families, and to leave a legacy of love for future generations. So I always say that every show. Why? Because what we're up to, what this show is about, really is talking about what works in empowering you in your relationships, empowering you in your life, and whatever it is that you're up to in your life. Whatever challenges that you may be meeting, whether they be mental, physical, psychological, emotional challenges, or even spiritual challenges. People have challenges with addictions. We find that where people have the biggest challenges are in their relationships, especially their one-on-one relationships with the opposite sex. I know everybody has problems with their children and with their parents. That's where it all gets started. That's where the model, if you will, for how we will relate for the rest of our lives gets started. So how you related to, or how you were related to by your opposite sex parent or caregiver, whether it was your mother or your grandmother or an aunt, or whether you were adopted, whoever it was that took care of you subconsciously and mostly non-verbally, although I'm certainly certain there were a number of verbal cues as well, set the tone for and taught you how to relate to the opposite sex. Now that may sound astounding to some, and to others it'll be like, okay, everybody knows that, so what? Well, those ways of behaving, those methods of behavior, those strategies, if you will, the strategies for being loved, for getting love, for getting nourishment, for getting acknowledgement, for getting the things that we need when we're a very small child, before you have formed an intellect, before you have formed a personality, before you have formed the ability to verbally communicate what you want and need, what you like and don't like, and what you will and will not put up with, before you've even gotten to a mental capacity to do those things, you've already been taught, mostly non-verbally, by behaviors, by facial gestures, by tones of voice, and sometimes by impact. Sometimes children are impacted physically along with a verbal command. But one way or another, you have been, your neurology, your neurological system, which is automatic, requires no thinking on your part. In fact, it is happening in the background, kind of like a computer program. In the background of your behavior, there are preset or programmed or conditions, ways of being that you absorbed from your environment before you could even think about it, before you could even judge whether you thought this was a good way to behave or not, whether you were able to establish any boundaries, because at that point in your life, you were 100% totally dependent for your food, clothing, shelter, well-being, protection upon those caregivers. So the caregivers really did set the tone, and I call them caregivers. For most of you, it was your parents, obviously, but I want to include anybody who was taken care of by somebody other than their parents, who had a profound influence on their life and on how they relate to people. And for the most part, people are very benevolent towards children and tend to take care of them and care for them to the best of their ability. You have to keep in mind, however, that whoever took care of them and whoever took care of those people and whoever took care of those people have set tones that have passed down generation to generation to generation to generation, and will be passed on by you to future generations, and your children will pass it on to future generations. So when we speak of and embrace growth to leave a legacy of love for future generations, this show's not just for you. However, you're watching, obviously. The show is for the many, many lives that you will touch, some whom you will never meet. But each and every one of you watching this show, if you think about it, if you were to get out a paper and start writing it down, you know hundreds and hundreds of people. Your life is touched by, and you interact with and touch the lives of hundreds of people on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, yearly basis. Some people on a daily basis. Today, I'm touching thousands of people's lives, and that's why I do the show. And some days I don't interact with hardly anyone other than my wife and my dog. So on your own individual level, you will touch people's lives, and they in turn will touch other people's lives. So who you are is vastly important. Who you are is vastly influential towards future generations. Because remember, I said most communication is nonverbal. Most of the communication that you're having, especially with children that are below the ages of 7, and then even on for the rest of your life, but how you communicate with children is extremely important, because you're teaching them certain things. You're teaching them the ability to forgive. You're teaching them the ability to set boundaries. It's important to teach, even on that level, what's acceptable and what is not acceptable behavior. It's important, even at a very early level, to allow an expression of one's self, be it a child, and then there are certain behaviors that are not acceptable, let's say in public. You know, we go on airplanes or in restaurants, and we see people allowing their children to be extremely loud or misbehave in a public place. Well, if you don't teach them that that's not acceptable behavior in a public place, then when they grow older and they become teenagers and then adults, certain social boundaries will never have been established for them, and they will teach that to future generations. And because of the law of entropy, if you've ever heard the word entropy, look it up. It is the tendency in the universe for organized systems to degrade, break down, and fall apart. So basically everything's falling apart all the time anyhow, okay? You and me, we're falling apart. The paint on your car is oxidizing and turning back into oxygen. It's falling apart. Molecules that are in an organized, structural, systematic way of being tend to degrade and fall apart. This is a law in physics, a law in the universe. And so social structures are based upon boundaries. They're based upon, you know, I hate to use the word rules, but they are. There's rules of conduct, of acceptable and non-acceptable behavior, isn't there? And so that's really what I want to talk to you today. After, in a few minutes, we'll go on a break, but I want to set the tone. This is really what I want to talk with you about now, at this time in our history, at this time socially. I'm sure that by looking around, you can see that more and more, to an alarming and frightening rate, social structures that used to be normal no longer exist for the most part. Part of it is due to the fact that many of us, and certainly our children and the future generations, live more and more in what is a virtual world. In a virtual world, the games you play and stuff, you fall down, gravity doesn't kill you, you get back up, you spin out, you shoot people, they don't die, you know, blood splatters everywhere, but you know, they're fine. In other words, normal behavior isn't taught in those video games. The rules of reality are don't apply. The rules of reality don't apply. Let's just put it that way. So that there's very little interaction with actual reality. You know, I was driving here. I noticed a big sign that was on a bulletin board. There was two hands holding a turtle, and there were two hands right next to it holding a joystick for a video game. And it was encouraging children and people to get out and learn about the forest, learn about nature, be out and learn about nature. And I know that, you know, they didn't have all that when I was growing up, and so we learned how to climb a tree, ride a bicycle, mow the lawn, do things with our hands that now I see people who are of this generation. They can't climb a ladder, a 3-foot ladder. They're like frightened of it. You know, riding a bicycle in where there's traffic, they're terrified because they haven't learned physical boundaries. And so part of what I want to talk to you about is about what are you passing on to future generations. But where I really want to see some serious change in my life, hopefully I'll be able to affect some of you with this next talk. You know, I just came from this weekend. My wife did the Advanced Women Only Workshop in Los Angeles. So for those of you who are watching who are graduates of the Women Only Workshop, it was fantastic. There were women mostly from Los Angeles area, a few from, I believe there was one from Arizona, and there was another one from Australia. They came from all around. And one of the things that I noticed was that in certain cultures, there is so much boundaries that we actually have to work very hard to get them to break through some of those boundaries. And by boundaries, I mean limited ways of thinking, limits in our thinking about what is and is not acceptable, what is and is not beneficial behavior, or ways of being, thinking, walking, talking. In other words, people are kind of bound up at a certain age, and we live in an age where it is the time of empowerment of women. Now, I'm sure you've noticed it. If you haven't, wake up and look around. Where have you been? But women are stepping into their power in all countries. Even in Iran, women are maybe not stepping into their power just yet, but you can feel that the women of Iran are pushing against the boundaries, you know, whether it be showing more of their hair or wearing a little makeup or how they behave or whatever. But women of Iran are courageously showing a resistance to an oppressive way of thinking, an oppressive culture, and an oppressive regime. And so for that, you have my admiration and respect, very much so. And I realize that is courageous and risky behavior, and I realize that it could backfire on you. And I also realize that you will not be stopped because it is natural and normal for a woman to express her beauty, her sensuality, her intelligence, and her profound ability to communicate and relate with other human beings. And so I want to empower you in every way that I can to do that. And so part of what we do at Embrace Growth is the Women Only Workshops and the Advanced Women Only Workshops. By the way, next weekend I'm doing an Advanced Men's Workshop. It is for the graduates of my HIM workshops. The HIM workshops, HIM is an acronym for Honor, Integrity, and Mastery. And so we simply named the advanced course Advanced Honor, Integrity, and Mastery, or Advanced HIM. And if you are one of my graduates that have taken one of my previous programs and you're watching this show, call my office and find out about getting registered in it. Also, if you're watching my show and you're outside of the United States, if you're traveling from afar, speak to them about, speak to whoever answers the phone there. Today it's Rosie. Tomorrow it will be Shada and Rosie. But whoever you speak to that answers the phone, speak to them about a travel scholarship that I will offer you, given that it's rather last minute, and I know that the prices of airline tickets will have gone up because you haven't had a chance to buy an advance ticket and save some money on that. So to support you in getting here, I'm offering a travel scholarship to my graduates who are traveling from outside the country to come to the Advanced Honor, Integrity, and Mastery Workshop. And I won't discuss the amount of that scholarship on the air, but you can speak with it about speak with my staff about it. Okay? All right. Enough about that. I'm going to take a brief break. I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk about women's empowerment and the necessity for breaking through certain boundaries in your thinking and yet maintaining certain boundaries elsewhere. There's a lot of, in the name of empowerment of women, a lot of really stupid things that are happening in the culture where women are becoming more masculine, they're trying to be like men, they're losing their femininity, and they think that that's women's empowerment, but nothing could be further from the truth. They disempower themselves with their behavior, the way they act, with the way they pursue other men, pursue men. I say other men because they're acting like men. When a woman pursues a man, she's being the masculine force in that relationship, and she's forcing the man to be the feminine or the receptive energy in the relationship, and that never works out. That always backfires, and then what you have is a lot of relatively desperate single women in their 30s, late 30s, early 40s, who have never learned how to attract and receive a man, and because the boundaries have been all screwed up. So we'll talk about that when I get back. That's what we're going to talk about: boundaries, women empowerment, and how to behave in a society where the boundaries have been all mixed up and reversed. Okay? I'll see you back here in a few minutes on Love Talk.